You're listening to Sit, Talk, and Listen podcast with your hosts, Payroll Rob and Xavi Bauer.
Yes. Welcome in episode 1.
We've made it.
This is your host, Payroll Rob.
This is Xavi.
And we're doing the thing. You know, we've been talking about a podcast for a while now. Always seems like there is steps and pieces holding us back, things we weren't ready to do. I think we're ready for it.
What do you recently? Yeah, I do. I feel like this is different. This is it. This is the time. A long time in the making, a long time coming. I'm excited. I am very excited. But like you said, we've had to overcome some early hurdles and obstacles, but
Yep.
only sharpens us.
Just the reality of being two guys in their 30s and being poor. Like we just can't afford to get together every day and BS and grab ass like we like doing. But now we're gonna try to grab ass a little bit every once in a while. We're gonna get together. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna see how everybody's doing. So like I said, we're two guys out of the Midwest. We got some ideas and some things. Hopefully we can talk about to spark some conversation.
Yeah, and I think, when we're starting isn't really important. Like the hopes of this, as we've discussed, is that you can come back and listen to this whenever you discover us. And hopefully, people are discovering us over time, and you can come back and you wouldn't really have to think about, oh, this is what was happening at that time. We might make some small, pop culture references here and there to the time and date. Like right now it is Monday the 20th, 19th, I think.
19th.
Of 2024. Monday 19th, February.
February 19th, 2024. And we are recording our first podcast for Sit, Talk, and Listen.
Sit, talk, and listen.
And we're bringing the people in. We're unmasking ourselves. We're introducing ourselves to the world and our listening audience. Just trying to tell them a little bit about ourselves. Besides the fact that we're poor and white, what else do we got? Moved around different cities in the Midwest, a couple colleges, 1 degree between the two of us, and it's a bachelor's, not even an associate's degree. So some might say we're well educated.
Yeah, I'm an idiot. Is for the most part, I think. I think we all are idiots in some way or another. I definitely
admittance is the first step to recovery.
Yeah. Now, Payroll says poor. I don't think we're poor in the sense of like, some people might hear that and say, oh, he's, but like,
we've been poor most of our lives. Literally $0 in bank accounts on more times than I care to count.
Yeah, but that could
that's legitimately poor, right? Is not having any money. Like people want to say, I'm poor, and they have multiple thousands of dollars in a savings.
I agree with that.
Don't want to touch my savings.
I agree with that, but I'm saying we've also never been like, oh, where am I gonna sleep tonight? Where am I gonna get my next meal from?
We do have a strong support system. We have family that have opened their doors and fed us and kept us out of squalor. If that family was not around, there's no guarantees. We probably would be doing all those other things. We would be just as poor. It's just the life we were born into, But besides the fact of being two poor white guys, we think we're kind of funny. So we're going to get together, grab ass, bullshit, talk some jokes, and then we're going to try to, have some discussions while weaving in some of our humor and all those kind of fun things.
Yeah. So I don't know. As far as this, first episode and stuff, like getting to know us or getting to talk and maybe catch up, and part of that, I want to, try to shed some new thoughts or new things that I'm trying to do right now and things that I'm trying to shape my mind to. And I'm always, me personally, I'm always trying to be open-minded and because I can be a person that's very hell-bent on my convictions and stuff, but at the same time, I don't want to be, so
married to these.
so headstrong on anything that if I'm presented with new things or new alternate, like, because I think for the most, and I want to make this kind of a constant theme of a podcast of everything kind of being a gray area and not so black and white.
Oh yeah.
And I hope that like a lot of themes that we talk about every week will, kind of shed light on that.
Yeah.
I think that that's something I try to live my life by is knowing and understanding, even though it's a struggle. Sometimes I want to be so reactionary and being like, that's stupid. That's genius. But, like for instance, I guess that I've been trying to shift my mind, and I was kind of talking to you this about off air earlier, is I used to get so anxious when it came to, I have this extra money. I then spent all extra money. If I spend $800 on a weekend, instead of thinking about all the fun I had that weekend, I'm so anxious. And the rest of the week, I'm like, wow, why did I spend all that? But I've been shifting my mind state to being like, oh, wow, I'm happy I had this extra money because I created these memories that I'll have forever with these people whom I don't know how long they'll be in my lives or how long I'll even be alive. So that's something I've been trying to shift lately.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And I'm glad, you're bringing this up, because I think that was something that I kind of missed while introducing the show, is that we want to have the discussions about the gray areas of life, knowing that everything isn't so black and white as everybody likes to make it seem. And also being able to be introspective with ourselves and things that maybe we've been holding on to so tight, thoughts and feelings. And that's a perfect example, right? Like, that you're trying to be able to always know and understand that the money you spent on those experiences allows you to have, memories and those experiences that you're going to carry with you forever. But that $800 is it's going to be replaced. You're going to make more money just because you have to. That's the simple fact of the lives that we all live, is you have to make money to continue to live. So that the money is going to come back, but you don't know that the opportunity for that experience is ever going to come back around. And so, in that same vein, I guess, I'm looking to say is, oh man, I'm blanking out. Where was I headed on that?
I don't know, but I can say this for myself.
Pick me up, Zave. Pick me up.
I can say that, and like as you mentioned, like we weren't necessarily born into a fountain of wealth. And so I think a lot of that, and I think of a lot of growing up and seeing my parents, especially my dad, always anxious about money and, always being so conscious about, spending. I think that's kind of played. And like, luckily for me right now, like I'm working 2 different jobs. I'm being able to pay my bills and this and that, but it still has not changed that fact of like, when I have extra money, I like to spend it because I haven't always got to do all these fun experiences and things. And, so I think like being able to do that now and doing things like with my girlfriend that are fun or with friends or getting to do these things that I will live for, like, if I'm going to do these anyway, like why view them with such anxiety on how much money I spend instead of like in 15 years, am I going to, like you just said, in 15 years, am I going to be thinking about, $600, $800, $1,000 that I spent on a trip? Or am I going to be thinking about, man, do you remember that time? Like we've been to Colorado. We still relive those memories all the time. That was Absolutely. 5 years ago,
And at the time it felt like, oh God, trip to Colorado. There's no way we can afford this, but made it work. Everybody went and had a great time and lifelong memories.
And that money that we spent and came and went in that time, like I probably haven't thought about that since then.
100%. Because that money would have been spent on something else, is bottom line.
But I constantly go back and look at pictures from that trip or think about different things that we've experienced on that trip that we could take forever. And in that vein, and going back to the intro, this like an intro and the introduction of like what we kind of want to get into and discuss. It's it's not like everything's going to be so structured, right. But overall, I think we want to talk about like like you said, we want
to bring some positive thoughts out, right? So we want to be able to, and we want to challenge our own viewpoints and our own opinions on things, right? Like I think that we want to make sure that we're we're trying to look full circle on any one topic, but we want to present it to people in a way, that's approachable, and that doesn't make them feel like they're also being talked down to, because nobody wants to listen to somebody stand on a stilt box and preach to them. Like, that's not enjoyable for people. I'll tell you something that I recently kind of started to change my tune a little bit about, right? Everybody talks about computers and the rise of artificial intelligence and these things, and everybody talks of it so fearfully because we've seen Terminator, we've seen all these dystopian movies and TV shows that depict what could end up happening if machines were to rise and to take over, and what happens if they become too intelligent. So I'd say that there's quite a bit of healthy fear against the rise of these machines and the AI and the robots and the stuff. But I tell you, more recently, that I've started to, I don't want to say accept the rise, but just know I understand that it's going to happen whether or not we want it to, because it's already there. It's already going on. So there's, no matter what, going to be a select group of people that are going to push that technology forward. So I'm spinning it. I'm trying to look at it the other way of like, okay, it's probably going to happen. So how are our lives as humans going to improve, and can they improve by integrating this new technology and new AI? And I think I think it's as simple as these robots can be doing these, meaningless tasks that humans forever haven't really wanted to do. Nobody wanted to clean toilets. Nobody wants to pick up horse shit. Nobody wants to work on an assembly line. They do because they need jobs and they have to work to survive and raise families. Jobs can still be found doing other things. Jobs are going to be created maintaining and installing and programming these robots. And jobs are going to be created in other sectors, just as they always have been. Most people used to work on farms, but then all of a sudden manufacturing came along during the Industrial Revolution, and now everybody moved to cities and got jobs at factories. So what's going to happen when robots rise? Well, the job market's going to change. It's going to make it easier for us as humans, because the meaningless tasks are going to be divulged out to something else. So we're still going to have the same productivity as a society, in my opinion. We're still going to be able to make all the food that we need to feed everybody. We're still going to be able to make all the clothes that we need to clothe everybody. But we have to accept that it's going to happen and just be willing to change. And I think that everybody would just much rather hold on to this, end of the world fantasy about what the technology is, instead of embracing it.
Well, for me, it's not even as much as the end of the world fantasy that comes with it. I do disagree with, and I shouldn't say I disagree with you, because I can see where you're coming from, and I don't think what you're saying is a thing to agree or disagree with. You either embrace this or you don't. It's not that I think robots are going to take over and kill us all. That is a problem that I've thought about in this, and like you said, that's what the main problem they bring up in these Hollywood productions of the said thing. But I think we are already facing a time in society where people are thinking less and less for themselves. And when I see AI and the rise of ChatGPT, we already go to YouTube and we already Google almost everything to try to solve all these things. We already don't like problem solving. We already are very diminishing as a society, as a human race, on being able to problem solve and think. And all AI is doing. ChatGPT's rise has came quick, fast, and I'm talking about college students, high school students, even people at work. My girlfriend's talking about 100%. She's an accountant in the accounting firm, and one of her coworkers
AI to develop emails. I mean,
one of her coworkers just got busted using ChatGPT to do some of these accounting things, and I don't know if that's the way that they're heading in general, but I know that this guy in particular was not supposed to be doing this, but that's already like ChatGPT. In what, a year and a half's time has became, it's overtaking Google and all these things, and people just go to, hey, like how are we going to solve any problems? And maybe you can shed light on that and maybe change I just think that as a society, as we've already been declining and self-think and being able to problem solve, AI is only the only thing that humans are going to be able to do is you need to learn how to code thing. You don't need to learn how to do anything else because that's all you'll need is this little programmer here. This guy is going to think for you. And like, I guess that's my problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I agree to a point, there's multiple layers to what you were saying. And I agree that there probably is a major issue with critical thinking abilities and people's problem solving skills. There is an issue there. I agree with that. At the same time, we've come to a place where a lot of the problems that people would solve in their lives had already been solved in the past, but they didn't have that information of, somebody else has dealt with this issue somewhere along the line in humanity, but I don't know how they dealt with it. So I'm just going to have to come up with my own, solution. And sometimes that breeds innovation, right? Like, even though we already know how to solve X, Y, and Z problem, if somebody doesn't know that that problem has already been solved and they try to solve it themselves, maybe they solve it more efficiently, right? They come up with a new machine or a new way of doing something that is better actually than the way that people had done it before, right? Like, we've experienced that. So yeah, maybe like humans are running into the same problems over and over ends up being for the betterment on the long run. But now it's like, right, all of the problems that people face, we can just go look up solutions, right? We can look up what a guy or what somebody has done to face that problem in the past. Like, oh man, I'm feeling really anxious today. What do people do to calm their anxiety? There's all sorts of information they can find out about that, right? Where before they would either have to go to a library and find a text that had been put together and then ended up at that library, or they just had nothing at all to go off of except their own guesses. So it's a double-edged sword, I think, in that sense. Like, it does minimize problem solving and creative thinking, but at the same time, it gives people a better starting place when they're trying to problem solve and critically think. Because a lot of times, the same things that you're trying to solve have already been figured out. So you could stress about something for weeks on end trying to figure it out yourself, or you could look it up and come up with 10 different solutions that people have tried. So really, is that a detriment to be able to save time solving problems because you're taking, the advice of other people in the society and other humans have done and tried? Because that's what we've always done, right? Is learned from the past and what other people have done and tried and then failed. We learn from failures as humans.
But don't you think individually, as individuals, like that stunts individual growth? You have to be allowed to fail. You have to be allowed to fail to grow.
I agree. I do.
Yeah, sure, it's a shortcut and it's a time saver, but I'm talking about individually. Are humans individually going to be allowed to fail?
Yeah.
Oh, but for time's sake, no.
It's not just time these days. It's all about dollar's sake too. Money is the root of every problem. So if money is being wasted on inefficient time being spent for it, say a corporation gets a group of employees together. They say, we have this task for you to do. And they say, okay, well, it's going to take X number of months. If they know that task can be expedited and be done in a matter of weeks because they get machine help, why would they not do that? They're going to save money. So
now, one thing I would like, though, I would like if AI becomes so smart that they realize in their world money doesn't mean anything in AI's world, and they start exposing all these rich billionaires that are responsible for programming them. That's what I do hope. I know earlier I might have maybe I'm getting a new perspective on this as well as I'm thinking about. I hope that AI gets so smart they're like, money. Why are we doing everything based off what makes these humans more money? Because money means nothing in their world. I hope they start exposing all these billionaires and these pharmaceutical companies for all the propaganda that they push, and they realize like this is an insufficient way to go about things. That'd be kind of cool. Now that I think about that, I've said
the AI robots are going to take out a Super Bowl ad and say Elon Musk.
No, that's exactly what I think they'd go against. So why would they need to add? Like, they don't need to make money.
I don't know. You said they're going to expose these guys.
We're just saying, like, if they get smarter than the billionaires, first of all, what if there's a cure for cancer out there, right? And this is a little conspiracy, but, there's a lot of truths to the fact that pharmaceutical companies make billions of dollars treating cancer a year. Now, do I know? I'm not suggesting that this is the case. I'm just saying there is a conspiracy out there. And they said it'd be, some people think that it would be more expensive to treat cancer than to cure it completely because, these people are having to go back and get all these treatments. So what I'm saying, like, what if this AI, what if AI exposes that and was like, hey, like, this is a simple fit. Like, this is how we could cure cancer. And like, oh, you guys have probably had this information for years, or maybe they can even recognize the fact that they've had this cure for years and expose them in that way. That's what I'm saying. Like these.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to think of how to get to that point. AI would have to become like sentient and then also realize that
I think it could.
It's being manipulated, or that people are being manipulated by other people, and then it would have to care enough to intervene.
Not even care to intervene, but if they're like programmed to like think best for humans in general, or I don't know how it would work. I'm an idiot. We established this 4 sentences in. I'm just saying that is when I could come. Like, I'm not really all like. I think AI in general, I have a lot of negative thoughts on.
I think a lot of people do, so that's why I was trying to.
I don't know if a lot of people do.
No, I think
Why would it become so popular if a lot of people? I think the majority of people are open to AI.
I don't know. I think I disagree.
ChatGPT is being widely used.
Yeah, but I still think that there's more people that are leery of AI than there are that are accepting of it still at this point. Personally, I mean, maybe we just hear more about the people that have the concerns. Because to me, it feels like I always hear people more concerned about it.
Some of the creators of these AI inventions start speaking out and warning against the dangers of them.
Yeah, there was who was. Oh boy, poor show prep. There's a scientist that famously like goes and speaks against one of his discoveries, and I can't remember which guy it was.
That's one of the things I'm alluding to.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's the same thing I'm alluding to. I'm alluding to the guy. He's one of the AI inventors. Yeah, I didn't know this topic was going to get to this point. Otherwise, I would have the topic on hand. I wish I had a computer in front of me that I could pull it up.
That's okay.
We'll get there one day.
Yeah. That's not the AI discussion really wasn't the main focus of today's episode. Today we really wanted to get into the topic of groupthink and people's willingness to, push down their own thoughts and feelings on subjects just for the acceptance of the group at large and the dangers of that. I don't even know if push down would be the correct. Sometimes they're so numb to it they don't even realize what they're doing. Well, sure, but I think that obviously there's people that unconsciously go along with groupthink, right? But then there's also, I think, plenty of examples of people that have feelings that are opposite of the group at large, but they aren't willing to express those feelings in fear of judgment and fear of alienation, right? Like, I think that people maybe more willingly go along with things they don't agree with now just because it's easier, right? So, the Webster definition of groupthink, the practice of thinking or making decisions as a group in a way that discourages creativity or individual responsibility. So just by the definition, by the book definition, it's taking away people's individual sense of self, which kind of is it's happened. It's just happening more and more with the social media and the things that we have in the world now, right? Like more people go to be validated in the thoughts that they have than they go to try to challenge against the thoughts that they have, I guess.
Well, yeah, I think that people have always kind of been wired to want to be accepted by their peers in society. Mm-hmm. So, I think groupthink's always been around, but like you said, it's more prevalent now because of social media, right. And not only social media and the fact that you can just post everything online, but you have such a global reach now. So you're not just trying to things that you're saying now can affect somebody in Minnesota, and you can find all these people that want to be viewed the same way, and then you find these topics that you align with, and rather than challenge anything normal or you don't see anything and think to yourself, how do I feel about this? you immediately go on and you want to see how other people feel about it.
You get
before
all the
form your
reactions.
opinion. Yes. And like I said, I think things have always kind of been like this, you know.
Yeah.
You can probably go back to 70s or 60s, you know, I guess as far as time's gone and society is formed. But
well, we referenced, you know, the what do you call it? Fairy tale, parable, short story, The Emperor's New Clothes. You know, okay, let me stop. For anybody that's not familiar with the story of The Emperor's New Clothes, it has to do with, you have a rich emperor who loves to wear the latest fashions and the most expensive fashions, and even will do so at a detriment to the people, that he serves, his constituents. So con men come into town, and then they convince this emperor that they're going to make him, some new clothes that are the most finest materials out there. And it's so rare to find these materials that only the people worthy enough and smart enough can see the new materials that they're using to make his new clothes, the emperor's. So for weeks, these guys work on an empty loom, like they're making clothes. And as the emperor has his bishops and other people in his cabinet go to check on him, they're never seeing anything be made, but just the fear that, I'm not smart enough to see these threads, but I don't want the emperor to think that I'm not smart enough, led them to say, it's coming along great. And then what do they?
Con. It's an awesome con, really.
Yeah. And so what do they do? They say, emperor, we have your suit finished. Don this suit. And he says, yes, it is gorgeous, because even the emperor himself doesn't want to seem, stupid, or, oh my God, I can't see the threads, I must be dumb. So he says, yes, gorgeous suit. And so he puts it on, quote unquote, and parades himself through town, but he's butt naked. But what does everybody in town do? Because they don't want to seem stupid. They don't want people to think that, they disagree.
These threads.
Right. So that groupthink sets in, and then they all say, oh my gosh, those are the best clothes we've ever seen. And praise the emperor's new suit. Well, what does it take? They come upon a kid, and the kid says, oh my God, you're naked. And then everybody's like, oh, wow, so he really is naked. We're not just all... It just goes to show that idea of groupthink has been around for centuries, but I think that we're getting to a place where it's becoming more detrimental, and people are less willing to individually think and put their individual thoughts out there, in fear that the majority of people, or that other people, won't agree with their thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. And parable is in the Bible, for reference to people who may not be familiar with.
That's not a Bible verse, I tell you that. So it's not a parable. It's not in the Bible. No, that's not a Bible story.
Oh, I thought you said parable at the beginning of this.
Well, I did, but I don't. I was just. It's from Denmark. It's a fairy tale, literary fairy tale.
Okay.
Well, it tells a story, right?
It does, but to your point, it goes right along with what we were saying in the groupthink of, how many people are so afraid to go against status quo that they're going to ignore what they're perceiving with their own eyes in fear of looking like an idiot. Even if it's something so painfully obvious, you don't want to be the first person to step out and say, this isn't right, or this is not how I feel about it, because of you don't want to be rejected by society, by your community. You want to be accepted. You want to be loved. These are all things that humans are conditioned to want to have and experience. Even if it's something as silly as, these con men coming to town and dressing these emperor up in a thread that can only be perceived by what? Worthy? Nobody ever thought to think, how we're all worthy. What makes these threads so special if everybody can see them?
And it's the same, it's not always the thoughts that you have that are, victim to groupthink, like the way that we perceive and accept people as a society is based off of a groupthink in a sense, right? Typically, typically folks that aren't as articulate with their words and can't, string together eloquent sentences are thought of as lesser IQ, right? That's a pretty common socially accepted viewpoint, I would say. Right? Am I wrong? What do you?
No, I agree. I think
People
there's
think
I think there's a lot of times where people perceive Southern accents or
Right, like if you walk in, you got a guy say, "Hey, buddy, Hill Jack, I'll tell you what, I lost down the road. I got to figure out where I'm going." You know, people automatically assume, well, this person's of lower intelligence, but they don't stop and like really listen to what people are saying, because most of the times, I say most. It's hard to know because sometimes there is a correlation between
I don't know if there's a correlation. I don't think that what you can afford or what the like what you've been raised to afford affects your intelligence at all.
Well, not afford, just the way that you.
I don't think there's any correlation at all. But that goes along with the thought that I had said earlier. I don't think there's that big of a gap amongst intelligence between everybody as we've all been led to believe. I think that there's what you have around you, and it starts from a young age, like what you think.
Yeah.
So maybe that correlation can be perceived as, well, this person's poor because their family was poor and family was poor, and the reason that is because their family lineage didn't have the brains to rise to the top. And I personally disagree. I think that it's a different trend that's happened there.
Yeah,
but
it's definitely like learned from an early age. You know, people try to push their position on people at an early age. Like your parents are like, "Oh, we're in this class, we shouldn't be doing these things," or, "Oh, we're in this class and we shouldn't be doing these things." Whether that be we're rich, we don't act this way, or, "Oh, we're poor, we can't act that way," is kind of how people have automatically like classed themselves, and then they pass that along to their kids, and can sometimes, stifle the growth in a sense. Like, right, if a parent tells their kid that they're dumb, and the parent keeps telling that child that they're dumb, then the kid's just going to assume that they're dumb, and they're not going to be willing to like open up and have new conversations.
And they might not even say outright that you're dumb in this way. Like, they might not just say, "You're stupid, you won't ever do that." That's usually probably not the case. But it's going to be in different ways of like, and they might even be speaking for their whole family. Like, "Oh, people like us, we can't afford this, honey." Or, "People like us, we don't do these things. Those are for the smart, the rich, And it can be taught at a young age. And I think it's definitely a class thing. But as to not get too far away from your original statement, I think that, yes, by the way people talk in lower class, or, and even sometimes, like people that come across, foreigners of, somebody who doesn't speak your language,
right,
you might perceive them as dumb,
yeah,
because they can't communicate with you the way that you can. Because they're in foreign territory, you might perceive them as dumb, but that is so far. That's such a naive. And really, the funny thing about it all is that that's kind of the dumb way of thinking.
Yeah, that's like, if you as an American go over to France and you're like, "Hey, everybody, where's your cheeseburgers? I see you got this nice Eiffel Tower here," and they just automatically assume that you're an idiot. Well, you're in France. You're just trying to check things out. So some guy comes over here that says, "Oh, I'm in America. I'm going to try."
What?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm losing my train here.
Then I think let me just go back and say, I think it might be rightfully so for people to think you're an idiot if you come to France and say, "I'm looking for a cheeseburger in Eiffel Tower." Like, you might really just be an idiot.
Well, I'm an idiot, so that checks out.
But, like, I think too, a lot of times, like, I think that there's a false sense of, and I'm going to say it, these rich fucking whites and their little proper talk. They think all these country hillbillies are stupid. They think any black people that speak with, Ebonics, or even white people that speak with Ebonics, they're going to perceive them as unintelligent. Let me tell you, that's so far from the truth. Right. But it's these elites, it's these rich whites and their little snooty ass Real Housewives and all. Those are the people who think that they're, and even worse, it's the kids of these people and the grandkids of these people who have not done anything that you would be like, well, they've built something for themselves, and they're born like it's their birthright to just be smarter than all these peasants.
"Oh, I'm part of this family, so I'm automatically smart." It's like, no, you're just a pompous asshole, And that's kind of how it's been portrayed through history, especially recent history. The white Europeans have said, "Oh, this is what an educated person should sound like," and so if you don't fit that mold, that box, then they've automatically become dismissive of you.
And educated and intelligence is two different things.
Yes, queen.
Yeah,
Preach.
like I think that is true. That is how an educated person might sound. That doesn't necessarily mean
They're intelligent.
Yeah, you could have somebody who doesn't even have graduate from 8th grade, be very smart. Maybe they can't articulate their thought the way that somebody who graduated from Harvard can, but their thought could be much smarter than the person's thought from Harvard is.
Yep.
There's a great difference, but groupthink, even in an animated movie like Cars, the dumb character is this mater, all rusted up car, talks like a hillbilly, and he's supposed to be perceived by the audience as like this lovable dumb character. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say there's the lovable dumb character is a classic trope of most movies,
and they all usually kind of talk like they're uneducated.
Yeah, as people what people assume an uneducated person talks like, and like obviously we've all met people that aren't intelligent that do talk in certain ways. So, right, like obviously there's an exception to everything. Once again, nothing is black and white, but these are all, there's gray area to everything. But being able to judge somebody's intelligence alone off of their speech is it's just not it. You can't do it. It's 100% a groupthink thing, right? Like you've bought into what society tells you a lower IQ person should sound like. You're not actually listening to the words in the the message that a person's trying to convey.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that society has created with groupthink that I think is just so far off. And not even in perceiving people's intelligence, but there could be groupthinks on jobs that are demeaning. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the interesting thing to me, is that we can groupthink and like think lower of, and these people have these jobs. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we would as a society, you know how many times you look at like somebody that's homeless and you've heard somebody say, "Oh, you want a tip? Like get a job." Like it's that easy. Mm-hmm. But you want, as a society, we want somebody to have a certain job, and so it's not just as easy as telling somebody to get a job, because even then we're kind of looking down upon them. And humans are interesting. Mm-hmm. Humans, we could be the same species, but for whatever rules society has had and whatever groupthink has allowed us to be, in the back of, like, even serving, I could tell sometimes there's people that come in there and they talk to me like they're smarter than me. They act like I'm stupid because of whatever class, or I'm serving them. So it's like almost like there's this separation between, we're not exactly the same species, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how people have always classed it, right? I mean, obviously, looking back at slavery, they tried to say that they weren't full men. They didn't have the same rights as a full human because they were 3/4 of a human.
God, speak of the massive, most tragic groupthink that's gone on since the beginning of time.
But slavery has been a forever human problem. I just said
beginning of time.
Yeah, it wasn't just an American problem. It's gone across the whole globe, and
I mean, yeah, literally.
It's most recently an American problem.
Since humans have civilized and formed societies, there's been slavery, and like that takes a lot of mass manipulation and groupthink.
Yeah. To tell a group of humans that, that group of humans, because they have different color hair, different color eyes, different colored skin, that those people aren't even real humans, that they only live to serve our needs. That's such a example of groupthink and how dangerous it is, to just go along with what the majority of people around you tell you.
And what's funny too is that as I sit here and think about groupthink and the history of it, and what usually changes or radicalizes groupthink is a revolution. But what takes a revolution is a bunch of groupthink just to be reversed. So they're still thinking as a group, but it's like it takes somebody to start thinking independent, you know,
100%.
like a Spartacus.
And to get a group going,
or yes, but then you also have to get groupthink involved to start a revolution, because you can't just have one person think against status quo and then take down like a whole Roman Empire or something.
Right.
Like it
They
takes
have to get
groupthink
people
to reverse groupthink. That's what's so funny about society.
Right. But there's a difference between like groupthink and then like, you know, people sharing ideas.
100%.
You know, right? Groupthink, the way that we're talking about it is when there's an idea that is the majority of people accept, and then the rest of people accept it just because they don't want to go against the majority, right? Like even if they know that what is being presented to them isn't the best or might not be the truth, they go along with it just because that's what the rest of the people around them are doing. So that's like more of the true thought of groupthink, like somebody organizing a revolution and getting people to like recognize and fight against, you know, tyranny or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, and I guess you're not reversing group. Well, you are reversing groupthink, but I hear what you're saying. It's not groupthink per se. It's a bunch of people like you want to say a bunch of people
together and actually agreeing on something.
You know,
getting
it could be a
together
bunch
and
of people
agreeing.
waking up to. I want to say it's reverse groupthink if there's somebody in a cult and they started realizing that they were in a cult, and then get everybody else to realize like, hey, we've been being brainwashed.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily call that groupthink.
No, that's once again people realizing something and then them agreeing on it, you know,
Yes.
and people saying, you know, I actually do agree with that, as opposed to the traditional sense of the groupthink.
Just
is like,
thinking it because somebody else is thinking it.
right. You're going along with it, even though you might feel the opposite, just because you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to be the ostracized one, right? Like a great example of that is 12 Angry Men. You know, we talked about that, a black and white movie from 50s.
Yeah. Henry Fonda.
Henry Fonda. So for those who haven't seen it, go see it. Go watch 12 Angry Men. It's a great film, and it depicts 12 men of a jury. They're
The entirety of the movie takes place in the
one
jury
room. Yeah.
Yep.
It's like a theater, you know, it's like a show, a play. It's so the jury, they go off and they're in a room, they're deliberating. Is that what they?
Yes.
So they're going over the facts of this case, and it's laid out that everybody in the room says, okay, this is an open and shut case. All the facts are right here. We have this old guy witness say that he saw the kid do it and this and that and the other thing. And so 11 of the 12 guys on the jury are willing to just go ahead and say guilty. And this kid would be sent off to death probably because it's a first degree murder charge. But all it takes was, you know, there's one guy that was willing to put his foot down, right? And say, actually, let's think about this a little bit more, guys. As opposed to how easy is it for one guy to stand up and say, let's think about this again, as opposed to he could have just been like, yeah, you know, I think that there's a reasonable doubt that this guy didn't do it, but everybody else seems so sure that he did it, I would just go along with it. Like
I would think the vast majority of people in that situation, it would have just been 12-0.
Yeah, they just would have said, well, 11 other people think he's guilty. No point in me trying to change the minds of 11 other people. I'll just vote guilty.
Yeah, the average human's not going against that.
So that movie is a perfect example of how dangerous groupthink can be, because all these guys are here to make a decision, and then the outcome of that decision is going to completely affect somebody's life. So you owe it, you know, to them to like actually look at the scope of the pictures. I feel like that we see that scenario play out in the business world most often nowadays, right? They'll put a group together for a project. They'll say, okay, we're getting ready to make a toothpaste commercial. We need, you know, your group to do some market research. And it's like you say we have 12 people in the group doing the toothpaste commercial. 11 of them do their research. They say, oh, okay, we've done our research. We know that teenagers, girls, and puppies are trending right now. So we need to make sure we do all those things on our commercial so that it'll hit all those things. And the 12 guys like, well, there's a lot more people besides teenage girl puppies that are going to need our toothpaste.
Teenage girl puppies.
Just, putting it all together there.
What in the world is happening?
It's an example of saying that
I'm joking.
it's used often where somebody's idea or creativity is then put down because they see that everybody else is going in a different direction, where maybe that the direction that they were going could have been as good, if not better, or added to the direction but they feel like they can't even bring their argument to the table because it'll just be instantly dismissed, I guess is really what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, so they start to suppress any thought that they have that might go against popular opinion,
Right.
or they'll stop wanting to take any kind of risk in their day-to-day lives or trying anything new because they don't want to be slammed, shut out, made fun of, or rejected. It always goes back to not wanting to be rejected, whether it be by...
Or sometimes it's just pure ignorance or, ignorance. And what's the other word I'm looking at? People's just their cockiness and ego can get in the way of groupthink a lot. A prime example of that is we talk about the Bay of Pigs, right? With the CIA invading Cuba, thinking that they could dig out Fidel Castro. It was an ignorance on the United States' parts, assuming that Fidel Castro was a not intelligent person and was not going to be able to handle our, advances on them. And also, it was assumed that our forces would be able to land in Cuba and take them over, and all that failed miserably because we just, as a government, the cabinets assumed all these things. They didn't. One guy had the idea, and the other guys just all agreed with it. Nobody wanted to push against those ideas, and so it was just a prime example of failures when a group gets together and decides not to think of a full circle, not to look at the full picture.
Yeah. I think, first of all, not that it's a pro Fidel Castro podcast, but I mean, how do you think somebody rises to the top of any of their country's power, and how do you make the mistake to think that they're stupid? I think
because they listened to how he talked. Probably they said, "Oh, listen to this guy talk. He's unintelligent."
Or because like the class, Cuba might not have had as much money as the United States. Again,
Sure.
Dollars don't always equal brains.
No, they usually don't.
Most of the time, don't. Like Bill Gates, yeah, he might have made a lot of money because of his brains, but
a lot of it has to do with opportunity and timing. It's just as much as it does brains. Like he could be just as smart as anybody else out there. There could be other people that are just as smart as him, but they don't have the opportunity to show and use those smarts and intelligence, in the way that he might have.
Different subject for a different day.
Yeah, I guess. But the fact is success is opportunity meeting, opportunity meeting, talent, I guess. Really, it's like anybody could have the talent, but you have to get the opportunity to prove that talent and then to advance that talent, I guess is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And like I said, I think that's, that kind of goes against groupthink, but I do agree that there's a lot of factors that come into reaching the level of success of a Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. Now, don't get me wrong, to reach those kind of levels of success, you've had to work hard. But again, I guess the only way you could tie that kind of thing into groupthink is that, something like Amazon, a bunch of people have to be bought into a product or, a website like Amazon to reach the levels of success it has. And I think that as society has progressed is a funny word to use. I don't necessarily believe that we have, but you see something on TikTok, which I think TikTok is probably the number one marketing right now. If you want
these days,
if you want to market anything, I think getting something to be popular or trendy on TikTok probably is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I'd say that's true. Because marketers have always wanted to attract the younger demographic. Because if you can get somebody locked into using your product at a young age, that means you got a consumer for life, right? Like if you know that, like I started using Degree deodorant at 13 years old, and here I am, however many years later, still using Degree deodorant.
Is that right?
That's right. Degree deodorant.
Really? You've never changed deodorant brands?
I tried once. I got a rash. So I said, back to Degree.
Wow, that's crazy. No, I guess I've switched back and forth throughout the years on things that I like: Adidas, Nike, Old Spice.
So
Degree,
my point goes that
I agree with
advertisers have always targeted younger, consumer base because they know they can lock them in. So I would say that TikTok is definitely the platform most advertising is looking at these days.
Yes. And so to the point that I was about to make is, like we've said, throughout time, advertisements have targeted the groupthink idea, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, why would you advertise if you're advertising to a bunch
Look
of
at
individuals?
Mr. Johnson's new Cadillac. Ooh. Bill, I wish you had a new Cadillac. Oh, sorry, dear. I don't have enough money this year. I'm leaving you. They make these advertisements trying to say, oh, you don't have the new Cadillac.
Is that an advertise? I don't know if that's a strategy
You
that
don't remember
anybody's
that
ever
one?
used. I don't
Or the
know
guy's
if
wife was going to leave him because he didn't drive
a
a Cadillac.
Hey, don't drive a Cadillac. Your wife's going to fuck the next door neighbor the next time you leave home.
They might not have said it in so many words, but they said it in a real,
I get what you're saying, but
I'm sure they put that out
I
there,
don't know.
but it was in a much more coded
Bill,
way.
We're still poor.
It was in the coded messages of what they're saying, right? That's all I'm trying to
Greg from
convey.
the office has
That
a
advertising,
Cadillac and a better dick than you.
they always try to say that, oh, if you don't do this, then you're in disagreement with what this person thinks.
Yes.
And that's
But
all I'm trying to convey here.
No, I know, it is funny.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
TikTok though, I think is a new thing now where I was like, I was talking about this earlier, how not only are certain restaurants popular at a certain time, but it's a certain item off of a certain restaurant and the way you have to eat it, and it's all like the same.
Oh yeah,
Dude, it's crazy. Like it's going further than advertisement now. It's like,
I mean,
we're all gonna not only like the same thing,
we're gonna do it the exact same way.
Do it the exact same way. Talk about it the exact same way. And if somebody, the most popular person, comes in and says, "This sucks now. This is what I like."
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to do this. We're all going to eat it in our car with juice dripping from our fingers and talk about how quirky this new little hack is that we can try from home. And wow.
Everything's umami these days.
Yeah, and then people will start, and I'll start notice. I know something's on TikTok when something I've never heard has all of a sudden been said around me 3 times within a week. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
Well, it's trending.
This must be trending on TikTok.
Yeah.
It's crazy, dude. It's no
agree.
longer just companies. We're advertising a whole style of living.
Yeah.
What to like, what to say, how to refer to yourself, pronouns, adjectives, everything, verbs. It's all being told what you're going to think, programmed into you before you even think it. That was a tangent, but I stand on that.
No, yeah. It's stand on business. That's what I say. And
Stand on
some
business. And that's another thing. It's like all of a sudden, as a society, we're all standing on business now. What the fuck is like? Yeah, I understand what it means.
Stand on business.
And I like
nobody's
it. I'll
standing on
say it.
business.
I'll say it. But it's like, dude, it goes right in hand to what I'm talking about. The fuck stand on business comes out of nowhere. I mean, I've said it.
Yeah, I know.
It's
I do
the
think
same-
it's funny. Everybody says I stand on business, but they have no idea what business they stand on. They got no original thought. They didn't think of anything on their own. They got nothing. They're standing on the same business that somebody else is standing on. They're standing on Jimmy's business. Jimmy's
Yeah.
the one who said that idea.
I'm pretty sure Drewski, who is an influencer, he kind of popularized that, like with a funny video, and like we've talked about that earlier. It's funny too how you can get grouped. Like you can start a satirical take on something, making fun of a whole group of people, and those group of people will be like, yeah, he's right. Hey, that is exactly what. Hey, it's about time somebody said it. And like, no, sir, they're making fun of you, you fucking idiot.
They're not agreeing with you. They're laying it out in such a way that you should see how dumb you're being. But they're so dumb that they can't even understand the satire. They just assume that it's somebody agreeing with their point of view. And like for that example, I was using Jeff Foxworthy, right? Like he does the redneck stand up. For
Here's your sign.
Huh?
So here's your sign.
That's the guy, yeah, Jeff Foxworthy, right?
Yeah, Redneck Comedy Tour.
So it's like those guys go out there. Most of
Blue collar. Yeah, blue collar.
blue collar.
I said
comedy
Redneck
tour.
Comedy Tour.
Like that was the biggest example of these guys are satirically like acting redneck. They didn't come from redneck backgrounds. Some of them. I mean, some of them did, but a lot of them lived in cities and are not rednecks.
Yeah.
But you have to look it up. My point is they went on the road telling these jokes about redneck. Well, you might know you're a redneck if you got 5 cars in your front yard without tires on them. Everyone, oh God, he sure is right. We got about 6 cars out there right now. Like, they're not telling you because it's funny. They're telling you because it's stupid that you were redneck.
And I think even if they came from that background, they're realizing how, like, even if they did, they're realizing how, like, hillbilly, like some of the stuff that they grew up was being, and they were making fun of that.
Yeah.
And in ways, you know.
And people say,
I
that's
don't
right.
know.
We are redneck because we got 6 cars in our row, and I'm damn proud of it.
I think it was Bill Engvall, Ron White, Jeff Foxworthy, and Larry the Cable Guy. Get her done.
Get her done.
Yeah, dude.
Those are the
Talk
guys.
about, the same people who appeal to the Duck Dynasty. If you're watching Duck Dynasty, you were also selling out those blue collar comedy tours.
The Venn diagram probably crosses over quite a bit on that audience, I'd say. And it's people don't know what satire is these days because they'll buy into whatever it is that people want to sell them. And if they think that somebody's agreeing with them, even if they're not totally agreeing with them, they're just being satirical, it's easy enough for them to latch on to that and be like, look at this guy, he agrees with me.
Yeah, I think groupthink makes things so predictable. Like you just said, you could kind of guess that if you were appealed to them, you were appealed to Duck Dynasty. And if you did that, you probably have some sign on your front lawn bumper sticker or your front window that says, let's go, Brandon.
Mm-hmm. And that goes all the way back to how we've developed algorithms, right? Like, this is what we've done as humans. We've just said, well, let's develop these things that basically stereotype every person and guess on what they're going to like based on the one thing that they've looked up already. That's how you end up down your YouTube rabbit holes, right? You look up one video, and then they say, well, if they liked farting puppies, they might like pooping cats. I don't know, dude. Just examples.
What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm saying, if you're going to search for videos of pooping dogs and farting cats, you're going to probably find the other one. You know, they're going to just go ahead and give it to you. Hell.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but
See?
I know, but like, out of all the things you could have brought up, you're like, oh, if this guy likes farting puppies, likes fucking cat shit. And
I don't know. Farting dogs came to my mind first.
now, to try to pivot away from the bathroom talk, the locker room banter.
Oh.
I think, you know, some of the other group thought that can happen. We've kind of touched on is, you know, how we should dress as a society, how certain people are perceived to be, you know, even if it's, and I guess it's a lot less popular. It's rightfully so a lot less popular now to kind of, you know, view things a certain way. But I think there's a while, like if we see somebody like in a headdress, a turban or whatever, you know, society, and I'm not saying like they would view them bad or good, but there's already a preconceived notion they're different.
Yeah.
You know, like and we've talked earlier on like different hairstyles that are expected to make the status quo. And I don't know if you wanted to save that for a different podcast for a different day.
It's tough. So it's like,
it goes
does
hand
that
in hand,
fall
but
into groupthink, or is that just stereotyping and racism, which is a little bit different than groupthink?
I think groupthink forms stereotypes and racism.
It can, but again, then you're
different
saying,
topic though. We'll save that for a different day.
if you're saying that the racism and stereotypes are formed out of groupthink, then you're saying that there's a lot of people that accept stereotypes and racism, even though they know that they're wrong.
I think they do.
You're probably right.
I think they don't want to admit they're wrong, but I do think that's how that happens.
That they know that they're stereotyping of somebody, or they're treating somebody as wrong, but they just do it anyway so that their friends accept them.
Do you think say you take the average person that doesn't really speak up against much, right? They just kind of they're conformists for better or worse, and you throw them in a setting where maybe they weren't even raised, you know, they're not racist, they don't have any racist thoughts, but you put them, they're at a new job and a bunch of their coworkers start making, you know, racist remarks. Do you think this person's going to stand up and kind of tell them like, hey, like the way you're thinking, the way you're like talking right now is, it's ignorant and it's really aged. Or do you think they're going to say anything, or do you think that they're going to try to kind of awkwardly laugh along, and then now all these 7 people making these remarks don't see anything wrong, and then bam, so it continues. Now this is a whole different, like, is racism stem from groupthink? I don't know. That could be a whole different topic, and I don't know this. We could go on for hours about groupthink because I think it affects most things in society.
Yeah,
I mean, how couldn't it?
But it's like I want to disagree with you and say that, and I want to believe that there would be more people that would be willing to stick their nose in it, right? And say, you know what? No, guys, you're kind of talking like a piece of shit right now. Like, you're saying some shit that's just not true or not factual. But I think you're right. I think you are right that the majority of people would just laugh along with it, even if they know that it's wrong, just to save the comfort of the situation, if you will. Yes. They don't want to be uncomfortable. But I know me personally, I have no qualms like stepping in and being the contrarian view, the viewpoint that is different from whatever is going on in the room around me. So if somebody were to come in and express something that I saw as, wrong or just factually inaccurate, I would probably say something. But I've learned in my time that as long as I try to say it in a way that's productive and I'm not just trying to cut the people down automatically for being racist, that they're more willing to listen to me, right? Like if you are trying to express an opposing viewpoint to what somebody has said to you, if you start your opinion off with a jab or a dig at the person for their view, then they immediately become defensive and they immediately will refuse any of your viewpoint. They won't even listen to it if you are digging at them, if that makes, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Like if I'm trying to express an opposing viewpoint, if the first thing I says, I'm like, well, you're a fucking idiot because that's false. Listen to this. Like,
and I'm glad you brought that up because I think that happens a lot in all forms of communication. Not when it just comes to that. I think we talk, and I'm a victim. I'm not a victim. I do that. I sometimes talk in definites even when I don't believe something is definite.
Totally.
This whole podcast, I want to, talk about
we're going to be better.
The gray areas about things. But I come to I think, like you said, communication more often would be a lot more effective. It's like, hey, I can see why you would think that way. I could understand why the things that have happened in your life has led you to perceive this way. And I'm not knocking that. I perceive it differently, and here's why.
100%. Like that, if every opposing viewpoint started off that way,
yes,
people would have no option but to sit and listen. But if it starts off with something that's going to be a dig at them or a shot, then they just put up a wall and stop listening and don't pay attention.
I can't, I think, and you said it right, I think most of the time it's met with, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Or maybe the person doesn't cuss her and they'll just say, that's dumb. How could they even think like that? Instead of just trying to think, well, what was their background?
Yeah.
Why could they think like that? Literally, totally. Why could they think like that?
What brought that person to that conclusion?
Yes. And I couldn't agree more. And I'm going to try. That's one of my resolutions as this podcast starts, and it will be more of a talking point on a regular basis than it usually is for me. But it's something I don't want to speak in such definites,
yeah,
because I think that's a very poor way. And I think that leads us to another thing. I think is the biggest thing in society right now. I'm not a fan of, and this isn't a political podcast.
Not a political podcast.
Definitely not a political podcast. I'm not going to ever state any affiliation. I'm not affiliated with any political party. So how can this be a political podcast?
Yeah, that's what that non-affiliated party wants you to think.
Yeah, but I think that's a problem with both sides, if I'm being honest, is they're so hell-bent that everything that their side says is right, and the other side is so stupid for not... How could they even think this way? Yeah. They're so wrong. Gosh, our country would be better when this is the president. Our country would be better when this is the president. And then, what happens? those presidencies come and go. Not a lot has changed in society, and life goes on. But I can't tell you how many people, when Biden was elected, oh, here's the end of our country. When Trump was elected, oh my God, what has this country came to? Right. How can both sides be so if somebody thinks so strongly about each other, more than likely, I think that, and I could have probably saved this for something that I disagree with, but gosh, it's just crazy to me how people have such strong feelings opposing each other. And like logic would tell you there's probably some gray area.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion to be had. And if we could just do it civically, they
can't do it without insulting the other side first.
No. And that's not just here. That's across the whole world.
Right. And that ties into like one of my favorite, kind of saying, a proverb, whatever you want to call it. It's, be curious, not confrontational. Right.
I do like that.
Be curious as to, okay, well, why do you think, what makes you think that? Or don't say, well, that's dumb. Why do you think that? Like, if you say that's dumb, why do you think that? People are going to be like, well, what? And they're going to shut you off. But if you just say like, oh, that's interesting. What makes you think that? Then they'd be more willing to like actually have a conversation of what's led them to those beliefs. And then you can break down of how they've reached that spot. And if there's flaw in their process of how they got to that thought, then you can have that conversation with them about like, hey, well, maybe that part of your reasoning is a little flawed or unfactual. Does that change your viewpoint?
Or deterred for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to say it's flawed, because there might be, like, again, it goes back to there could be a reason it's flawed.
Yeah.
But I do think what you said is important. Like, ask why.
Yeah. Be curious.
But don't just ask why and then wait for them to finish talking so you can push whatever your thoughts are on them.
Yeah.
Ask why and literally be
listen.
open. Because maybe your opinion is going to be changed. Yeah. Or maybe you'll see. And it's not all about changing opinions. Opinions should be fluid. Opinions shouldn't,
once you have an opinion, you shouldn't be quote unquote set in your opinion. Yeah. There's
and it's not
few opinions that are like hills to die on. There really is a few.
Yeah.
But not.
And not much opinion should be, this is how I feel about, I like this, I don't like this. It could be like, most things should be depending on the setting or depending on the mood or depending on which way I'm looking at it. It shouldn't be, I like this, I don't like that. If you like this, you're stupid. If you don't like that, you're dumb. And that's how things are. You've never seen this movie? Are you fucking kidding me?
What do you mean you haven't seen that movie? It's regarded as the funniest movie of all time.
That is the best acting that I have seen in 35 years since Good, Bad, and Ugly. I'll tell you, hey, you haven't seen this? Oh my God. Hey, Kevin, he hasn't seen this.
What a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
This is how it is.
Yeah. Dude, literally, groupthink is everywhere. It is.
And it's
not just
dangerous.
America. Like, you look, there's religious wars that have gone on far before America was established. Like, this has gone on since the beginning of time.
I mean, you could look at the Catholic Church. I mean, there's a large example of groupthink in a sense, right? Like everybody got together and said, oh, these ways of living are the right ways. And if you don't believe that these are the right ways of living, then we're going to condemn you. And then all of a sudden we have 500 years of holy wars.
And there was, and I don't think Catholicism was the start of that. I mean, there was religious wars before, but that goes back to the Roman Empire.
Catholics did a lot of persecuting through the Dark Ages.
Yeah, it kept something goes to the Roman Empire. But there was definitely wars and stuff like,
Well, there was wars, but were they as religious based as what the Catholics did during the Crusades?
Probably not. The Crusaders are celebrated in a lot of ways through the Catholic community.
Yeah, it was the whites triumphing over the non-whites and then moving their way of the world.
The whites throughout history have a good history of celebrating their
victories,
their wins over people who don't look like them.
Yeah.
Genghis Khan was not a white, and he sure conquered a lot. But I think that often is, the victors of said wars can push their agenda, and that's what gets told.
Yeah.
And that's why Christianity is the most prominent religion in Western civilization, is because of the Romans.
History always takes the side of the victors.
Yeah. So that's all that is. Again, groupthink, and not even groupthink. Well, I guess it's the foundation of groupthink.
Yeah. Because not as many people, right? If
all you have to be is what you're taught.
If you have a differing view on that stuff, it's hard to prove your different.
Is religion the biggest example of groupthink in the sense of being passed on generation to generation. Like, how many people born Christian are Jewish, or how many people born Jewish are Muslim, and all these things? Or do you just kind of conform to whatever religion that your family's born into? Is that groupthink?
Is it?
I'm just asking. Food for thought.
It's hard to say if it's groupthink or if that's more just like indoctrination. Like it's different again. Like groupthink being
it's cousins to groupthink.
Huh?
It's cousins to groupthink.
Yeah, they definitely are in the same family tree. But you know what I'm saying? Like groupthink again is when a person goes along with something even though they might have a different opinion in their heart, right? Like, but when you're born into a family that has a certain set of religion and you grow up that way, you might not actually have a different religious belief in your heart. You just only know the one thing. That's not really the same as groupthink.
Yeah.
You're not going along with it knowing it's wrong.
Okay, but what about once you're in this religion and, okay, so going back to the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church might change rules, and all of a sudden now, as a whole religion, we don't believe this?
Right. Yeah, and there is...
The Vatican tells us that this is not what we believe anymore, so now we don't believe it. Like,
right, and obviously that can be it could be an example of groupthink, but also what that has done is caused other people that aren't willing to go along with that groupthink to split off and create their own churches, right? We have the Lutheran Church, we have Baptists, we have Presbyterians. They all split off from Catholicism because somewhere along the line, somebody was like, "Oh, the Catholic way changed. We don't agree with that no longer." So it's, it's not everybody has always gone along with that, but there have obviously been people that have changed their views to, fall in line with what the church's views might be if that's changed over time. So that would, be probably an example of groupthink. But then again, those people they didn't have that varying view of they didn't think of that themselves to come up with a different viewpoint. They were told to have that different view. So that's a little different than somebody going along with something knowing that they feel the opposite of it.
How often do you think you fall victim of groupthink? And you're somebody who probably goes against it.
I do
less than most, but you still.
Because we
all are human at the end of the day.
Oh, of course I am. Of course I am. It's tough to say because I've always been one to take the contrarian view and always is push back on whatever the popular narrative is in the room, unless it's a popular narrative that I totally agree with and I understand. Then I'll be in agreement with it, but I'll still sometimes bring up the opposite viewpoint of the popular narrative that I believe in. Sometimes I'll believe the popular narrative, but I'll still bring up the unpopular narrative, the opposite one, just because I'm curious. Sides.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious of, maybe we should look at it this way.
Or earlier, there's times where I didn't even know I was a part of the popular narrative until after I Super Bowl was last week. Travis Kelce screamed in the face of Andy Reid. And when I saw that, my immediate thought was wow, if that was a black player, there'd be a lot of public backlash for this.
Yep.
It would not be accepted. But since it's Travis Kelce, this icon, this, dating the most famous girl in the world.
And he's white.
It was kind of brushed aside. The Chiefs won, might have been a little different. They lost.
It became a joke then. Everybody laughed about it.
Yeah, and then today I'm looking through and seeing what people were saying about this incident, and it turns out there's a lot of people that kind of had that thought, wow, Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown both had said, "Oh, if that were us, we'd be out of the league." Now I don't know if that's true, but obviously I wasn't, the only person that saw that and had that same reaction.
Right.
So,
but I still wouldn't say that falls in line with groupthink.
No, not groupthink. I'm just saying there are there's still times where where your opinion falls in line with the popular opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. I mean that could happen a lot where my opinion I love pizza. I'd say that the majority popular opinion of people is I love pizza.
Yeah, and you love pepperoni pizza too, right? That's one of the most popular toppings.
I do enjoy a good pepperoni pizza, yes. And so in that case, it's a popular one. But then it's I could also stand there and look at it and somebody that says they don't like pizza, and I'd be like, okay, I'm listening. I'm open for that conversation. you don't love pizza. Let's go.
Yeah, but you make a good point. There's probably a lot of things that the majority of people like, not because they're group thinking, but just because it's good. Metallica is one of the most successful rock bands of all time because they're good. The same with the Beatles and this and that. Now, sure, people could hear that and be like, "Oh, I hate the Beatles. I hate Metallica. I hate Michael Jackson."
Art
but there's a
definitely
reason.
becomes like a subjective thing, right?
Yeah,
Art.
but there are sometimes like I do think it's kind of was groupthink and like when it was popular to be like, "Oh, Nickelback sucks," right?
Yeah.
And
and I agree because there definitely was people that like had grown up to Nickelback and totally rocked out to their songs and played Rockstar on repeat, and then 10 years after they had that life, they heard all these people dogging Nickelback. They're like, yeah, Nickelback sucks. I never liked them.
Or they'll even be like, how embarrassing. I used to love Nickelback. Like they were embarrassed. They'll say like, oh my God, I used to love that song. What was I thinking?
Right. It's
Cringe.
Like being a dude during the boy band era and trying to be like, yeah, boy bands suck, even though you know every word to bye. That's you're falling victim to the groupthink of, oh, I shouldn't like this thing because like what it's a female thing to like boy bands or whatever.
Yeah, but I also to the point though, and to kind of.
Do you think there's ever an instance where groupthink is good?
I mean, I'm sure you're putting me on the spot. Like, I'm sure if I sat here and thought, like, yeah, I'm sure. Like I said, and it's not.
I don't know. I don't know that there is. Personally, I don't know that there is a time.
And earlier, it's funny because you said one of the bad examples of groupthink throughout history. Well, I think one of the worst examples of groupthink throughout history is like in the 1940s over in Germany. There's a lot of groupthink going on there. That might be the worst example of groupthink in history.
Yeah.
And again, it starts with somebody spewing some nonsense bullshit, but he's charismatic enough. And a lot of times it starts with charisma. You can, if you have charisma, you could push anything and become popular. And that is scary.
Yeah.
That is scary. Like somebody with Hitler, obviously extremely charismatic. You can't get millions of people to believe some of these vile thoughts that he had.
And that goes kind of to the conversation of intelligence as opposed to education, right? Like some of the best con men in the world didn't have any kind of education, but they were highly intelligent and just knew how to elicit response from people.
He was a failed artist.
Yeah. So it's like...
He was a mad boy.
It's... trying to think of that, I guess. But I would say that the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany was a prime example of groupthink in the sense that they started off as a small, extremist group in the sense of they were pushing their agenda and not as many people were on board. But as they became more and more popular, more and more people were like, oh, well, this is now the predominant party in Germany, so we better go along with it or we're going to be ostracized by our friends and even punished later on, right? Like once the Nazi Party was in full power, if you spoke out against it or anything like that, you were killed, thrown in jail, any of those things.
Now, I think there's some groupthink that's correct. Well, I don't know if it's groupthink, but okay, maybe it is. Just things like we can all agree as a society that racism's bad. The R word, bad.
Yeah.
The other R word.
All of them. Yes.
Pedophilia.
Bad.
Bad. And there might be some people out there that are like, they have the urge to do those things.
Oh, but it's an orientation or,
But no, I'm talking about like there might be people that want to do those things, but are so afraid of being rejected by society that they don't. Right. And if that is groupthink, I don't know if that's groupthink or not. But if we can all agree that slavery's bad, racism's bad, can we say rape? Yeah, I'm saying it. Rape, bad. Pedophilia, bad.
Bad.
Most of these things, we should all be group thinking.
Yeah.
This is
we
bad.
should as a society.
Yes. So I was just trying to think on.
No,
I was going back to
that's a great point. Maybe you're right. Maybe that is kind of like a good example of groupthink.
Anytime we're treating humans like they are less than.
Mm-hmm. But maybe
I think we should agree. I'm not saying if that's groupthink or not, but I think there are things as a society that we should agree upon.
Right. And I think that we do, and maybe that's a slight difference. Like those are
that's why I said I didn't
moral
know.
ways of living rather than like
But they always haven't been.
human. Yeah, but it's yeah.
I mean, there's still some places in the world where some of these things are widely accepted. And
I understand, and I agree. I guess what I'm saying is more that
you don't know if we form these opinions because of our moral compass or because society's told us they're wrong.
No, I'm saying that,
But-
these are morals as opposed
Well,
to
let
like
me ask you then, though.
as
Do you
opposed
think
to, like,
we think
problem
these things are
solving.
wrong because we have a moral compass, or do you think this is how we've been taught? Those five:
I'd say
slavery, racism, pedophilia, rape, murder.
it's wrong because we have a moral compass, and it's wrong because that's how we've been taught.
Well, yeah, but why do you think it was maybe more practiced? Why has it?
Is it practice or just not accepted? But it's just
I think that even when slavery was going on, there was people that felt. I mean, John Brown obviously felt a certain type of way about it,
yeah.
and several people along the same lines of all these
Obviously,
abolitionists.
people had to think it was wrong.
There's a lot
to
of
eventually get rid of
abolitionists.
it. Yeah.
Right?
Eventually, you had the entire north part of the country wanting to abolish slavery. So, obviously, somewhere along the line,
I don't know if they all wanted to abolish slavery or they just didn't want this. That's again a whole, gosh.
splitting the hairs.
So, as I don't know how
I'm
long.
just saying that I think that groupthink is more like maybe when you're talking about like a problem solving kind of thing is less than like a morality thing. It's more as like if people come up with a way to approach a problem. If 5 people think that this is the way to solve that problem, and then you have a different idea of how to solve that problem, you're more likely to go along with those people's solution to solve that problem. Is more like a classic groupthink scenario than I think of like us just being moral people is. Like
Now, on the spot, though, and I know we were kind of talking about topics earlier before we were recording about future podcast ideas. I do think that'd be interesting. I'd like to go into the history of things that when are we taught right or wrong, and when is it just a moral compass?
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. I don't know if you feel like that's interesting, but I think it's interesting, and I think it's a different topic than nature versus nurture as well.
Right. No,
But-
it's interesting. I agree.
Anyways, now we've talked a lot of groupthink and
Yes.
covered a lot of bases on there. I think you could do several episodes on groupthink, and maybe we'll come back to touch on more specific groupthinks in the future, because I really have hopes that this podcast goes the distance.
It's going the
It's
distance.
going for speed.
Yeah.
Now, to go against groupthink, what's something that you can say that you're opposing the popular belief of the public?
So I believe that it's of the popular opinion of people that, they say that everybody should go to therapy. Everybody should go to therapy.
Who's that?
Just
people.
society at large.
Yeah.
I'd say society at large would agree, and they say that everybody should go to therapy. I have to disagree. I think that there is a time and a place for therapy when people are too far detached from their self, maybe. But I think that the most power that people have is to be able to self-correct themselves and dig into their own thoughts and feelings and get a full understanding of why it is that they feel and think certain ways. And I think people are more than capable of doing that without having to quote unquote go to therapy. Like obviously people do benefit from going to therapy, but I don't think that as many people have to go to therapy as we're led to believe. Everybody says we're in a mental health crisis at the moment across the world. And that might be true. I would agree with that. There's a lot of people that are more unstable and unsure.
I might have just found I'd have to disagree with that, but go ahead.
I just think that, there's more people now than ever that are anxious and are looking for some reprieve. But I think that it's within, the power to have control over your own mental state comes from within. And so when we say go to therapy, I think people are under the impression of I can only get help if I go seek out professional help. They feel more powerless now because they know that the therapy is out there and they know that, this is what people should do. But what did people do before there was like psychiatry and common therapy that we have nowadays, right? They had to deal with it themselves, either internally or whatever, right? But you have to get real introspective to figure out why you're feeling uneasy or why you're feeling the feelings you're feeling.
I do agree
and I think
with
that people have that ability within them. So I don't know. I don't strongly disagree. I just think that the thought that the popular thought that, everybody should go to therapy is just a little bit, I just disagree with that. I think that everybody should be introspective and should be thinking about how they're made up, but I don't think that everybody needs quote unquote professional help.
I agree with a lot. I disagree with some of the things you were saying there.
Sure.
But I agree. So I do agree with, yes, I think that people have the ability to self-reflect, make changes in their life, because I think a lot of times it's if you have the ability to look back and relive these experiences that you might be not wanting to relive, but that are necessary to relive yourself and see how certain things came to be. Yeah, I do agree that you have everything capable within you to change that. Now, I think that where I disagree with in the past, that before therapy became so prevalent, that people were just, getting things over themselves. No, I think that a lot of times, like our parents' generation, our grandparents, that they just had all this anger and, bottled it all up and were just really, they died angry people.
Because they weren't allowing themselves to get to the bottom of why they were feeling the way that they were feeling.
Yeah.
And
I think maybe everybody should just do some healthy doses of psychedelics once in a while. And
I agree.
But that's a different topic. Now, what I will say, and I'm going to spin off of because what I tend to disagree with is that we have more mental health issues than we ever have. Now, I'm not trying to knock mental health. I think that definitely mental health is an issue, but I think that it's always been around. And just now that we have these labels and we're recognizing things as anxiety and stuff, anxiety has been around forever. Yeah. Now that we've just recognized it, same thing as autism or any of these things that now that we're diagnosing and thank gosh, we are diagnosing these things.
Because we can get people help.
But I don't think that means that it's been around. I think that
it's been
really now more than ever we can treat some of these things because there is. But I mean, I think forever, like anxiety's been around forever. But before it was just oh honey, we're having Dad's a little upset because we're having money issues. No, he's anxious.
Yeah,
he's stressed. He's struggling, not knowing how he's going to provide for his family. Mm-hmm. He's anxious as hell. He doesn't have a temper. I think these words have just been replaced. Like he has a temper is now like, I'm anxious and I have an anxious outburst. I think mental health was probably at its worst, at least in modern times in the 1930s. I think mental health was probably pretty bad then.
I'd say the Great Depression had people a little down. It was called the Great Depression after all.
Yeah, but I just think that now so I'll just tend to disagree with the fact that there is a mental health crisis. I think that there's always been a mental health crisis. I don't think it's a crisis. I think, matter of fact, I don't think there is a crisis. There's not a mental health crisis. It's something.
Do you think that people are just more aware?
Yes.
But
it's not a crisis because I think a crisis would you would assume that it's worse than it's ever been. I do not think that mental health is worse than it's ever been.
Yeah.
I think now going back and tying this all into groupthink, I think people having a voice and being able to say this makes me anxious and this makes me sad and this makes me angry. Now, in that sense, maybe, we have all these people that can tie their feelings to a word like anxiety. But that's not to say this feeling is new. Is the feeling of anxiety new? No.
Right.
People have been jumping off buildings since they've been skyscrapers.
Since they've been
They're
built.
depressed. They don't know how to deal with their problems.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe therapy can help people out there who aren't like, even though I agree with you that we have the ability to, but
just
like how
change
many
comes
people,
from
how many
within.
people know how to do that?
Yeah.
You know, and that's sad because I agree with you. Like I said, and I've always felt that way. Like for me, I don't, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm knocking therapy. I think it can help a lot of people. For me, it's not necessarily my jam. But if you or a loved one,
I mean, when we get together, when I talk with my loved ones, anybody that I really care about, it's like a therapy session.
Yes.
You know, the people that are around you and care about you will have true and engaging conversations and help you get to the bottom of your thoughts and feelings a lot of times.
I agree. And
So
give a voice to
by me saying that I think that people can, you know, get to the bottom of their feelings and their anxiety, you know, I think that they could do that without therapy is not for me saying that I think that they need to do it all on their own. I think that a support system of any is going to be able to be your therapy. I guess I'm talking of therapy in the clinical sense. We don't need to pay we don't need to pay a professional $300 an hour to listen to our problems and then prescribe us a drug that's going to sedate us. I don't think that that's going to be very beneficial.
I could not agree more. And I think we've tied some of these topics in beautifully as you've retracted and tried to make not so much of a blanket statement, but to
Just
further
clear
expand
up,
upon
you
your
know.
opinion. I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. And I think this is a great way to end what has been, to me, a fun first episode. And I can't wait for years down the road to go back and listen to this and cringe
Ooh.
because of how far we've probably came since then. But in the meantime, I love that this
Yep.
has felt good. This is a
Yeah.
topic that I thought was very interesting, and I'm at a good place.
Yeah. It's, you know, a little bit of a rocky road. Episode 1, you got to expect some of that. But overall, I think we got a lot of the main points that we wanted to discuss across. And I think that that's all we're really trying to do is just, you know, spark conversations.
Yeah. And it's a rocky climb, but if everybody started at the peak, mountain climbing wouldn't be a thing, right? It wouldn't be as special to get there. So I look forward to that journey. This is fun, and it's going to be a hell of a ride, brother.
All right, Xavi. So for you guys, we will catch you next time.
Yeah.
Peace.